This just in, the Indianapolis Colts may be without quarterback Carson Wentz for the first month of the upcoming NFL season. Wentz suffering a foot injury in practice Thursday and will now consult with a specialist about possible surgery. It is not a season-ending injury at this point. The Colts acquired Wentz during the offseason from Philadelphia for a third-round pick in this year's draft and a conditional second-round pick in 2022. There may not be a quarterback in the league who's taken on more criticism in the past few seasons than Wentz, and expectations were high that he would have a bounce-back year. Wentz benched in favor of Jalen Hurts with the Eagles last season after being sacked 50 times and throwing 15 interceptions in 12 games. Injuries have been a part of Wentz's first 5 years in the league. He has played a full season just twice in his career. And for more on this, let's now welcome in senior NFL reporter Jonathan Jones. JJ, good to see you. Obviously not the news that the Colts were hoping for in regards to Wentz.
No, absolutely not. And, you know, they've really, the word out of Indianapolis was, hey, no big concern, no issue. The way that this has progressed, though, signifies to me that it is an issue, and that has signified as such really this entire day. It happened Thursday at practice, finished out practice, and then doesn't practice on Friday. And when you get evaluated by Dr. Robert Anderson, he's going up to Green Bay where the practice is, Dr. Anderson's practice, to further be evaluated. Well, the issue there is, you know, they can send the MRI to Dr. Anderson, and the noted foot specialist, a doctor that I know quite well actually, you know, he can take a look at the MRI and say, oh, well, that's what it is, and here's where you go from here. But the fact that Carson Wentz is going to see him in person really means one of two things. Number one, the MRI is slightly inconclusive, and because of that, you want the good doc to get his hands on Carson Wentz and really try to figure out exactly what the issue is. That's one, and that's really the better of the two options. Option two here is, well, we want you to go up to Green Bay to see Dr. Anderson, and he's going to confirm what we think this is. You're going to discuss what your options are, and if you need to have surgery, you're going to go ahead. You're already going to be there at the facilities to have the surgery done either that day or the next day, you know, whatever it may be. And if it is surgery, Jeremy, depending on what the injury is, it is absolutely going to sideline him, not just for the remainder of training camp in the preseason, but it will sideline him for a portion of the regular season. Again, depending on what it is, we don't know yet what it is, and it doesn't sound like the Indianapolis Colts know exactly what it is. But we see that schedule right there. I mean, you're starting with the Seahawks and the Rams and the Titans. Those are three playoff teams. The Dolphins were knocking on the door of the playoffs. The Ravens were a playoff team last year. So 5 playoff contending teams to start the season, where if Carson Wentz has surgery, really almost no matter what the severity of this foot injury is, if you're going to operate on his foot here this week, it is highly, highly unlikely that he would be back in time for the first 4 games and maybe even the first 5 games of the season.
Yeah, there's a real possibility that they could be 0-5 by the time Wentz even takes a snap for the 2021 season. Jacob Eason elevated, taking snaps while Wentz is out, but no word on if he is automatically elevated to QB1. They opted not to re-sign Jacoby Brissett. You knew it was a gamble when they brought Wentz in. But JJ, do the Colts have a backup plan at quarterback?
Well, this is what happens, Jeremy. You pushed all your chips to the middle of the table on Carson Wentz. This is a guy who is injured often. I'm not going to call him injury prone. I think that's unfair to any number of athletes. This guy has fought through more injuries than I even know about or would care to fight through myself. But the fact is that more times than not, he is faced with a significant injury during the course of the NFL season, one that prevents him from playing football. On top of that, he's coming off the worst season of his career, one that dealt him any number of mental hurdles as well as the physical issues and tolls that he's gone through. And so now you're taking on this contract. You are trading away draft picks, a conditional second, maybe a first if he were going to play enough, and we'll probably get to that in a little bit. And so you're hoping that he's going to be healthy, that his mentals are going to be right, now playing with his old coach, Frank Reich, and there's not a big backup plan. Chris Bauer, the GM of the Indianapolis Colts, has gone with the veteran route here the last couple of years, obviously going with Phillip Rivers last year and now Carson Wentz. Listen, it makes sense that they're going to elevate Jacob Eason right now. They drafted him just a year ago. You want to see what he has, but he's never thrown a pass in an NFL regular season game before. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no way that he's going to be able to do it, but he's a late round draft pick who's never thrown a pass in an NFL season for a team that has playoff aspirations, that should be knocking on the door, that very well could be atop the AFC South. They're going to be competing with just one other team, the Tennessee Titans. And so you look around the landscape at potential free agent quarterbacks or quarterbacks that you could trade for. One quarterback is Nick Foles, a guy who also knows Frank Reich, a guy who has had success in Reich's system. We all know about that magical Super Bowl run that the Philadelphia Eagles went on a couple of years ago. And frankly, considering the quarterback battle there in Chicago between Justin Fields and Andy Dalton, we know that Fields is the future there in Chicago. We believe that Dalton is QB1 for at least week 1, but we're going to see about that. Dalton doesn't really have a spot there in Chicago. So, you know, I believe that he would be willing to rework his deal. I think Chicago would be willing to offload him and that contract and find him a spot at a place where, if you're the Indianapolis Colts, you want to win. And you're going to be evaluating Jacob Eason very, very closely here these next several days. And it should be very clear to you very quickly whether he can be a guy who can beat playoff contending teams like the ones we saw earlier, the Seahawks and the Rams and the Dolphins and the Ravens, et cetera, et cetera. And if he is not, then you need to find a quarterback who can make you competitive in those games. I don't mean to say that you can't give the guy time, but you don't have a whole lot of time here if you were trying to be a playoff contending team, because, Jeremy, as you pointed out, you start out 1-4, 0-5. That's a death sentence in the NFL. You're not making the playoffs more times than not, and overwhelmingly more times than not. If you start out that way, you have to have a quarterback. And if Carson Wentz goes under the knife anytime soon, he will not be available for the first month or so of the season.
Okay, so what kind of opportunity does this present in the AFC South? And I mean, you mentioned they're fighting with Tennessee really for top spots. It's pretty much the two teams in that division, but hang on a second, Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville Jaguars, a team on the rise. What kind of opportunity does this present for perhaps a Jacksonville or, dare I say it, even a Houston?
Don't say it. Don't say it for Houston. I'm going to be surprised if Houston wins 3 games this year. For Jacksonville, I don't know that it necessarily changes the math for me with Jacksonville. I think that they are going to be a competitive team. I think that they're going to win some games. I don't know if they're going to wind up going, 9-8. And it's always funny now that we have 17 games, having to do that math really quickly. I don't know if they're going to be able to go 10-7 and get into the playoffs. I'll put those expectations on them in 2022. I'm very much a wait-and-see guy here with Urban Meyer, with Trevor Lawrence, who has looked fantastic so far in Jacksonville, according to all reports. But I'm just going to wait and see there. I think that it is between the Colts and the Tennessee Titans. And I know that the Titans, a small market team, a team that, has been overachieving in some people's minds the last couple of years, but you just want them to maybe get over that hump or at least make a little bit more noise throughout the season. For whatever reason, they don't get the respect that they are deserved. And so really, I think that this is the Titans division. I don't think that the Colts, before this injury news, rewind back to Thursday afternoon before this happened, I would have had the Colts solidly in second place of the AFC South before this Carson Wentz news. And so now afterward, I still think that this is the Titans' division to lose. And again, if the Colts plan to be competitive, if they plan to go to the postseason like they did last year with Phillip Rivers, they're going to need a quarterback that keeps them afloat until Carson Wentz can come back if he undergoes surgery. And if he does not, Jeremy, they still need a plan, because if he doesn't undergo surgery, then what that indicates is that they believe that with time, this injury will heal. But it sort of baked into that is, well, it could always crop up again if he comes back too soon, or if he takes enough time. It's not magically going to 100% heal during the course of a 18-week NFL season, a 17-game season. That's always the danger when you're not operated on, when it is a close call, that it could crop up again where you absolutely do need surgery. And in that case, they will still need a quarterback who can keep them afloat. So I am not sure that they're just going to go with Jacob Eason, but they shouldn't be in panic mode just yet. But Chris Ballard should absolutely be surveying what's going on in the NFL world at the quarterback position, understanding what his options are, so that if and when he needs to push that button here in the next couple of days after some days of practice with Jacob Eason and the ones, he'll be able to.
As you mentioned, JJ, the pressure may not be on right now, but if Wentz is going to be out for a significant amount of time and Eason doesn't perform the way they want, well, then it's going to be time to start looking around. JJ, good to see you as always. Thanks for hopping on with us to talk about Carson Wentz possibly missing the first month of the NFL season. And for more on that injury and all the happenings at training camps around the league, check out the Pick Six podcast. Will Brinson and the Cavalcade of Super Friends. So obviously have thoughts on Wentz. Download and follow wherever you get your preferred audio.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.